Yo, the first Bitcoin president, Donald Trump, wins in a landslide victory, dominating the competition and vowing to create a Bitcoin strategic stockpile. Let's not forget, America holds around 210,000 Bitcoin, more than any other country in the world. Did the US just accelerate the nation state adoption of Bitcoin? And will Trump keep all of his Bitcoin promises? In today's video, we'll be unpacking this and more, but we do think it is interesting that Trump has handpicked multiple Bitcoiners to be a part of his administration, like Elon Musk, RFK Jr., JD Vance, and many, many more. But before we dive into this rabbit hole, let me bring up my fearless co-hosts, Nico, and of course, our guest for today, CEO of Casa, Nick Neuman. What an incredible, incredible day to be a Bitcoiner. Let's jump right into some of this source. So, of course, I have to play the video that we saw at Bitcoin conference in Nashville. This is Trump in his own words talking about what he plans to do. We're going to hold him to this. Hopefully, as a Bitcoiner, we get all the promises we have. Of course, free Ross day one. This is a victory for the Bitcoin community. But again, let's hear what Trump had to say about this.
The federal government has almost 210,000 Bitcoin, or 1% of the total supply that will ever exist. But for too long, our government has violated the cardinal rule that every Bitcoiner knows by heart. Never sell your Bitcoin, right? That's right, isn't it, huh? That's right. How did I figure that one? Never sell your Bitcoin. And so, as the final part of my plan today, I am announcing that if I am elected, it will be the policy of my administration, United States of America, to keep 100% of all the Bitcoin the U.S. government currently holds or acquires into the future. We'll keep 100%. I hope you do well, please. This will serve in effect as the core of the strategic national Bitcoin stockpile. As you know, most of the Bitcoin currently held by the United States government was obtained through law enforcement action. You know that. They took it from you. Let's take that guy's life. Let's take his family, his house, his Bitcoin. We'll turn it into Bitcoin. It's been taken away from you because that's where we're going now. That's where this country is going. It's a fascist regime. And so as I take steps to transform that vast wealth into a permanent national asset to benefit all Americans, today I repeat my pledge to commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time served. It's enough. It's enough.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Of course. It's what all the Bitcoiners were fighting for. Free Ross day one. Absolute political prisoner out there. And let's just dive into it. Remember when we saw this clip come out of the Bitcoin conference, how Nico pointed out the political strategy that happened at the Bitcoin conference 2024. Literally right when Trump finished on this speech, we had Senator Cynthia Lummis come out and walk out with the bill for the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And so here we are at Coinbase, we're reading the headline, U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve to be funded partly by revaluing Fed's gold and draft bill shows. Of course, here's Cynthia Lummis with the bill. Remember the iconic video of her walking out with the bill, like, here's the bill. This isn't just talk. They are drafting the bill. So we're going to look at some of the bill propositions here. And we got the purchase of Bitcoin for a new strategic reserve would be financed partly by revaluing Federal Reserve's golds, according to draft legislation from U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis's office. And the plan proposes establishing a Bitcoin purchase program of up to 200,000 Bitcoin a year over a 5-year period. And let's not forget, at the same conference, RFK Jr. also came out and his Bitcoin speech might have been a little better. You know, he sounded a lot like a Bitcoiner. He's talking about buying, I think it was 500 Bitcoin a day for 5 years, just something incredible to get a huge Bitcoin stockpile. Of course, when we watched this speech, we were all kind of waiting for Bitcoin or for Trump to say Bitcoin's going to be a reserve asset. He called it a Bitcoin stockpile. I guess, tomatoes, however you want to look at it. Anyways, reading a little more of this article, U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis's plan for a new strategic Bitcoin reserve would finance purchases of the cryptocurrency partly by revaluing gold certificates held by the Federal Reserve. Lummis, a Wyoming Republican who is known for a Bitcoin-friendly policy stance, probably one of the best, pro-Bitcoin politicians out there, announced her intention to propose the reserve on Saturday at the Bitcoin Nashville conference. She came on stage again, historically, minutes after Trump did, and the Republican nominee in this year's presidential race delivered a speech on Bitcoin. It was packed. It was absolutely packed. Anyways, let's go on a little further and let's look at the countries and governments that own Bitcoin. So, according to treasuries.bitbo.o or bitcointreasuries.com, you can see all of the holdings from the current nations right now. In the USA, when Trump announced this, he had around 210,000 or 1% of the total Bitcoin supply. According to the numbers here, they're around 207,189,000 Bitcoin, followed by China with 194,000, and then the UK with 61,000. And you can go down and read this yourself. And it just shows. And this is, I think, the biggest thing that us Bitcoiners kind of want to talk about here is not only did the first Bitcoin president get elected here yesterday, but the administration is packed with Bitcoiners. Obviously, we know Elon Musk, he's got Bitcoin on the treasury for Tesla. We know JD Vance holds about, I think, roughly around $250,000 to $500,000 in Bitcoin. RFK Jr., who's sounds like he's been completely orange pilled. And then, of course, Vivek Ramaswamy, he's also pro Bitcoin. We have Howard Lutnick on the Trump transition team. So it looks, if you follow the heuristic personnel equals policy, it looks like the Trump administration is going to be favorable for the Bitcoin industry. This is kind of what we've been saying on this show for a while, that we would much prefer 4-year covers of the Bitcoin industry versus what we've been dealing with the last 4 years with Operation Choke Point 2.0. They basically attacked our industry. And it's becoming very interesting that now that Trump has been elected, it's just going to send ripples around the world. Every country in the world now has to legitimately look at Bitcoin as something that they can't just relegate to the corner. They have to take it seriously. We know that Russia is starting to legalize Bitcoin mining. The BRICS nations are talking about dropping the dollar. We know China has their Hong Kong ETF playing out. So everyone, since this announcement, has started to pivot. They started to become a little more favorable. And personally, I think this is really going to kick off the nation state adoption of Bitcoin. Yes, we have El Salvador with Bitcoin as legal tender, but now every country, if Trump follows through, and some might argue that that's a big if, but I think it's almost well in the bag that he's going to follow through. He did say last night in his victory speech that all the promises made will be kept. And so that sounds very good, not only for Ross, but of course, for acknowledging Bitcoin as, eliminating the capital gains tax. Remember, he said, why do you have to pay gains on your coffee purchases? I think this is a new era for Bitcoin. It looks like in the 16 years since Bitcoin's been alive, it looks like Bitcoin and Bitcoiners are fundamentally changing the U.S., which personally I think has the most to lose, considering the U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency. I think this is kicking off a new wave of Bitcoin adoption. Obviously, this stuff isn't going to happen quickly, but it's going to happen, in my opinion. I think big things are popping in the Bitcoin world, and the whole world has to take Bitcoin seriously. I think 2024 is a huge year of laying the bricks and the foundations for Bitcoin being adopted, not only on the personal level, the corporate level, but now we're seeing it's going to be taken seriously by the biggest countries in the world. Nation states are coming, boys and girls. So hopefully you're still stacking. Make sure you're taking that Bitcoin into self-custody. There's some debate on how this Bitcoin strategic stockpile will take place, but I think the signal remains the same. Bitcoin is a legitimate thing, and people have to take Bitcoin seriously. And now Bitcoiners are in the highest levels of office, and you just love to see it. Bitcoin's winning. Bitcoiners are winning. I feel really good as a Bitcoiner today. And of course, we got an all-time high last night as the election was happening. It was a double victory for Bitcoiners yesterday. Not only do we get the U.S. government to kind of step back a little bit, but the price is running. You just love to see it. Anyways, Nico, I'm getting excited. What's your thoughts on all this stuff? How are you feeling this morning?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday was a historical night. You had the Trump win is going to be considered one of the greatest comebacks in American history. The media onslaughts, the assassination attempts, the impeachments, the conviction, the questionable election. And the fact that he came through, and this was the first pro Bitcoin candidate, and now we have a pro Bitcoin candidate in the White House. And now the Bitcoiners have become part of the donor base. And as Washington D.C. works, it's kind of run by its donors, right? So it's a big win for the industry. Now, in regards to the strategic reserve, we'll wait and see. I like the way that Trump approached it in Nashville. Obviously, RFK was able to be a little bit more. He was, because he was a third party candidate. He was able to say things that were outside of the Overton window in terms of the traditional in terms of the traditional parties. But the way that Trump approached it was interesting, right? He said that he'll protect the right to self custody. He'll fire Gary Gensler. He dropped the we're not going to sell as long as my administration is in power. We're not going to sell any Bitcoin. But he knows that an executive order only goes so far, right? That's why he got Cynthia Lummis to go out and quickly after he finished the speech and just present the bill in front of the Bitcoin audience. Now, does that mean that bill is going to be passed? No, but I think it is very, very positive that it is extremely positive that the Republicans not only won the presidency, they also won the Senate, and they also won the House, specifically because part of the Republican Party platform was to protect the right to self-custody, was to protect the right to mine, and also end the so-called Operation Choke Point 2.0, which has been going after our industry. I mean, you've had the arrest of privacy developers, you had the attack on self-custody, you had the proposed 30% Bitcoin mining tax, you had Caitlin Long's federal banking charter denied, right? The attacks by Elizabeth Warren, all that. So I think this is a huge win, for the Bitcoin industry from a regulatory perspective. To be specific, Bitcoin doesn't need a politician to succeed. But from a regulatory perspective, it's extremely positive. And last thing that I'll say is, imagine being Ross right now. And he now knows that there is a very high probability that this nightmare that he has been enduring over the years is almost done, and he's going to be welcomed back as a hero by the Bitcoin community. He's almost home. A couple months. I texted Lynn, Ross's mom, yesterday. I congratulated her. Yeah, it's a big win for Bitcoiners all around the world. Anyways, Nick, as a Bitcoin entrepreneur, as the CEO of a Bitcoin company that specifically focuses on self-custody, I'm sure you've been paying close attention to this election. And I just want to emphasize this, guys, like, this is not a partisan issue in terms of the Republicans and the Democrats. There are many Democrats that are pro Bitcoin and pro crypto, but there is a sect of the Democratic Party, specifically the Elizabeth Warren camp, that hasn't been so friendly. So I think it was very, very important to send a message that, Bitcoiners and the Bitcoin industry is here to stay, and you're going to have to take us seriously. You're going to have to take us serious as a voting bloc and as a donor base. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so I think you're exactly right that it's a bipartisan thing in a lot of ways, except for that small group of people. Because if you look at some of the election results for the Congress and the Senate last night, it was pro crypto, pro Bitcoin. They brand themselves as pro crypto, but I think Bitcoin is really the underlying thing for all of them. They were the ones that, in large part, won their races. And whether it was Republicans kind of flipping major Democrats like Sherrod Brown, that was a big race where Sherrod Brown was the incumbent, super anti-Bitcoin, got flipped and actually sent out of his seat in this election, or Democrats who were keeping their seats, and arguably a big part of that was the fact that they were pro our industry. I think it was a real win for our industry as a whole. Like you said, the donor base matters, and I think this was the first election where our industry was very organized and brought the money, and that had a huge impact. And so I think the like David Bailey and the Bitcoin Magazine guys getting to Trump and really getting his ear, and being able to talk to him, bring him to Nashville, get him talking about Bitcoin and on the pro Bitcoin side of things, kind of broke that dam overall. And suddenly a lot of people realized all at once, oh, we shouldn't be ignoring the Bitcoin industry. And this is actually very favorable to align with from a donations perspective. And then I think ideally what happens is, some of these people for sure are just doing this from a donations perspective. But ideally what happens is they take the time now to learn more about Bitcoin, learn how this can make our country better, people's lives better, and lean in from a philosophical perspective as well, and actually use kind of some of those underpinnings to make things to improve the state of things in our country.
100%.
Totally.
Opti?
Oh no, I was just gonna say totally. Like, we would be remiss if we didn't shout out David Bailey and the Bitcoin Magazine team, the crypto fund, Bitcoin Pact that they created. What was it, like $136 million? Something we keep saying on the show. Shouts out to Max Kaiser. He who has the Bitcoin makes the rules. And now that politics is landing on our front door, you can tell that you can't ignore Bitcoiners. You can't ignore this movement. It is a viable political movement at this point, and this is just the first election. It's just getting started. Anyways, Nico, you want to pop in a little more before we get into the show?
Yeah, absolutely. Opti, it seems like Rumble is down right now. It's not live.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not up. This restream change is messing.
There is about 1,000 of you guys watching live right now. So if you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Opti, let's jump into the news, but first let's give a very special shout out to our lead sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. Buy real Bitcoin, enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada and the USA. It takes about 2 to 5 minutes to get started, to get signed up after you put in your email address. It's a clear 1% spread. It's Bitcoin only. It's non-custodial, empowering sovereign ownership with free automatic self-custody. By the way, if you are interested in making larger purchases on Bitcoin Well, you guys could check out Bitcoin Well Infinite. So this is a white glove service experience tailored to transactions of $50,000 or more. I will personally set you up with the right Bitcoin Well Infinite representative. You got to send me an email at nico@bitcoinwell.com. And also, every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points. And you could actually redeem those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest, which I am working on getting set up right now. Give me 1 second. There we go. I'm having trouble, Opti. There.
I have it up here. Let me pull it up.
Can you pull it up? Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, I got it. This restream really threw us off.
They literally just changed everything on the back end. It's kind of been a throwball. Anyways, Opti, let's do the contest. So guys, every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points, and you can redeem those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest. So first person to scan the QR code on your screen right now has won 500 sats. If you use promo code simplybtc, you get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin Wishing Well. All right, everybody, let's hit the numbers. We have lots to talk about. Let's check it out. Here we go. I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to stampseed.com today.
Let's go, boys and girls. Of course, scan the QR code. Oh, it still has the 21% off. It's 15% off if you use the promo code SIMPLY. And yeah, get yourself some titanium seed plates. All right, boys and girls, we're over here on Clark Moody's dashboard. Of course, the Bitcoin price is at $74,660, which means the sats per dollar, aka how much the dollar is worth in Bitcoin, aka how much Bitcoin you can buy for a single dollar, is currently at 1,339 sats. And the current block height, which might be one of the most important numbers in Bitcoin, is currently at 869,157. The market cap in fiat terms is at $1.48 trillion. We're inching up, boys and girls. We are in price discovery mode. Love to see it. And the Bitcoin versus gold market cap is currently at 7.89%. A lot of room to run in the hard money game. We are coming after the gold market cap. It will happen soon. And the total percentage of Bitcoin that will ever be issued is currently at 94.18%, which means that's currently 19,778,399.24 Bitcoin that are circulating. You might want to get some Bitcoin before it catches on. I've been hearing rumors that there's a lot less Bitcoin on the exchanges. You love to see it. Price discovery mode is going to be great going into 2025. All right, let's go into some of these numbers. Of course, Nick just brought it up. It wasn't just Trump that got elected. And I think this is a theme that we've been talking about here on Simply Bitcoin for a while. It's the fact that how we really change things is if we get a lot of Bitcoiners in positions of powers, or rather a lot of people that are for Bitcoin, pro Bitcoin, and aren't actively trying to fight the Bitcoin industry. So I'm over here on standwithcrypto.org. It should be Stand with Bitcoin, but hey, we won't hold it to them. And we're going to kind of go through some of the people, some of the numbers of how many pro Bitcoin, pro crypto people got elected yesterday in the US, which I think is very favorable moving forward for every jurisdiction. It's kind of the main theme we've been talking about on the show since we started to enter this election cycle. It's that you can't ignore Bitcoin anymore. You have to take Bitcoin and Bitcoiners seriously. You can't just call us criminals and psychopaths and illiterate financial, whatever they've been calling us for a long time. Bitcoin is here and you can't stop the Bitcoin trade. So again, crypto election updates. Of course, President Trump, he's running on a pro-Bitcoin platform. The Republican Party has become more pro-Bitcoin. They're talking about protecting self-custody, protecting mining in the U.S. I mean, he's been kind of joking of, what was the meme? We're going to make all the Bitcoin in America, like made in America Bitcoin. Okay, so looking down the line a little bit. So in the House of Representatives, we got 253 pro-crypto candidates elected. In the Senate, we have 16 pro-crypto candidates elected. And we'll go into it a little more so you guys can kind of see some of the people here. You can see, you know, whether they strongly support crypto. Again, go to standwithcrypto.org and you could go to your jurisdiction, maybe start to pick some people that might be your representatives and, you know, get in contact with them if that's up your alley. Of course, yes, Bitcoin now is getting embraced on a federal level, but where you really make changes is on the local level. So, we're not going to necessarily pick a lane. They're both Republicans and Democrats here that are pro Bitcoin / pro crypto, however you want to talk about it. But it is leaning a lot to the right. A lot of people that are, pro crypto, supportive of Bitcoin, somewhat crypto, but the point remains the same. A lot of Bitcoiners or pro crypto people got elected yesterday. So I would highly suggest you go in here, check out who in the Senate, who in the House of Representatives got elected, who you want to get in contact with. Maybe, if you're so inclined to go work with them and get in contact with them and tell them that there are Bitcoiners in their jurisdiction and you want to hold them accountable to their stances on Bitcoin. This isn't just a one day and we win a victory here. It's still going to be a long political battle for the next 4 years, but it does look like we are getting 4 years of cover, a more pro-Bitcoin friendly administration. And as a Bitcoiner, you just love to see it. Nico and I, well, rather more Nico. Nico's been joking for a while here that, man, it got dark for a little bit. And if things were going as bad as we thought they were, we might have had to leave the States, but now it seems like we no longer have to do that. And I mean, look, we got Nick here who has a Bitcoin company in the States. We've seen the saga that happened with a lot of the Bitcoin wallets, the Lightning wallets that left the States. We've been covering Operation Choke Point 2.0. We've been covering the Samurai arrests. It got a little dark there for a while, but it looks like there might be some light at the end of the tunnel. So again, go with standwithcrypto.org, see who's in your jurisdiction, get in touch with them. But man, a lot of pro Bitcoin, or at least in this term, pro crypto people got elected, and you just love to see it. Bitcoin as a political movement is growing up. And now they have to take Bitcoiners seriously. Again, shouts out to David Bailey, the Bitcoin pack that he created, the 134 million that they injected into this election cycle. Just goes to show that when Bitcoiners get organized, we are a force to be reckoned with. Remember, there's roughly about 50 million Bitcoiners or crypto enthusiasts in the US. It's a sizable number. This is only going to increase. And I think as price discovery mode comes in, things are going to get really fun once we start to see the retail FOMO. Anyways, Nick, I'm going to pass it to you because, yes, we are a Bitcoin company in the US, but we're a media company here. And as someone that has a Bitcoin company, I'm sure you've been watching the landscape. You just kind of hit on it.
Let's be specific.
Yeah,
a Bitcoin
company
that focuses on self-custody, which was one of the things that has been demonized, or they've been coming up with terms, right, Nick, like non-custodial Bitcoin, like trying to make
or unhosted wallets.
Unhosted wallet,
that's
exactly,
the big one,
precisely.
Right? It's like it sounds like you're doing something sneakily bad. Can't quite put the finger on what it is, but it's unhosted, so that doesn't sound great.
Exactly. So you're a Bitcoin entrepreneur and you've built your business on this. So, what are your thoughts on this, man? Do you think we'll see I'm very, very confident we'll see a better regulatory environment. What are your thoughts?
We'll for sure see a better regulatory environment. I think there's really a couple of levels that we could see with this, right? So the base case is there will just be less active hostility towards our industry, right? So Casa, as a Bitcoin company, has been debanked due to Operation Choke Point 2.0 approximately 1.5 times. Definitely one time a few years ago by Silicon Valley Bank, which subsequently went out of business. So we're thankful that they debanked us before they went out of business so we could move to a different bank. And then even as recently as a few weeks ago, we had one of our banking partners need to shift to a different one. And it was questionable whether it was because we were too risky as a Bitcoin company or whether that bank is actually just having trouble and our main provider needed to move to a different bank behind the scenes. But either way, I call it like 1.5 times being debanked thanks to Operation Choke Point 2.0. Even just taking their hand off of that chokehold from a regulatory perspective will be really helpful with just leaving us alone and letting us do our thing to build around Bitcoin. And so that's the base case, right? It's like, how do we just make this a little bit easier, a normal environment for companies like us to build something great for people in the US and the rest of the world. Then there's the next step up, which is like the upside case, which is Trump or the new Congress, whoever it is, actually does create some favorable regulation for our industry that shares kind of, here's the rules of the road, that protects self custody. That's part of the Republican Party's plank. And so actually getting that into law, I know Cynthia Lummis is really big on that. And there's a few other Congress people who are really big on protecting self custody. Getting that stuff into regulation, some of those protections can actually really allow our industry to flourish and companies like Casa to be able to flourish, because we know the rules of the road. The rules of the road are supportive of innovation, and they're supportive of Bitcoin specific innovation. And that is the upside scenario for us. I think we probably have, so we've got the current executive, the presidency and the executive branch, we've got them in place for the next 4 years, or at least Trump is in place for the next 4 years. His cabinet, which, as you guys were saying earlier, is expected to have a lot of Bitcoiners in it. They might make it 4 years, or it might be something that's like a couple of years and then they transition out. Not everybody in the cabinet makes it 4 years. But so there's some amount of years in there where the executive branch is very pro Bitcoin by nature of holding Bitcoin themselves and really understanding it. And then you've got the Congress, which some amount of the Congress people that are in today are going to be up for re-election in 2 years, not 4. So in that 2-year span, it'll be really interesting looking at 2026. Does this pro Bitcoin wave continue? And do we get more people into Congress who are pro Bitcoin? And does that then increase chances from 2026 to 2028 that we actually get pro Bitcoin legislation passed? Or is now this window between 2024 to 2026, where Republicans control the executive branch and both houses in the legislative branch, is that the best time to get pro Bitcoin legislation passed? So I think that there's some interesting kind of decision points coming that will be happening over the next 2 years. And we won't necessarily have to wait we won't necessarily have the full 4 years. We'll see what happens with Congress in 2026, but getting it done as quickly as possible, I think, is in all our best interest.
Totally. Nico, this is your time to shine, bro. You've been talking politics and Bitcoin all year. We've gotten a lot of flack for it. So first of all, before you get into your bit, do you feel a little bit vindicated?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I just want to emphasize, like, this isn't a fight that we picked. Like, we didn't go and say, hey, all Bitcoiners, now we're Republicans and we're on the Republican camp. This is what happens after 3.5 years of anti-Bitcoin regulation, and it kind of forced our hands a little bit. Operation Choke Point 2.0, of course, when they arrested the Samurai wallet developers, when they arrested the Tornado Cash developers, and then the way that they did it was it was so insidious. Like, first they arrested the Tornado Cash developers. Then they set a precedent. For the first time in U.S. history, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned open source software. You could see where that goes, right? Then Coin Center sued the DOJ for the Tornado Cash case. That case got dismissed. As soon as that case got dismissed, like a month after they arrested the Samurai wallet developers, right? Then you also have the Elizabeth Warren using the tragedy that happened in the Middle East to release this bogus article coming out of the Wall Street Journal claiming that Bitcoin was being used to launder money for terrorism. And then it came out after the fact because of, all the ruckus that we formed on X, on Twitter, that turned out to be total bogus. And it was actually the GOP majority whip that got the head of the FinCEN in congressional testimony to admit that the vast majority of illicit finance is actually done through the traditional financial system. Another thing that I'll bring up as well, TD Bank got one of the largest fines in history and all they got was a slap on the wrist. If anyone in our industry did that, they would literally be locked in a box, right? So it's this isn't justice. It's a double standard. Clearly they have it out for the industry. I think it's because they potentially feel threatened. One of the laws that was passed, one of the, it wasn't passed, but one of the bills that was put to vote in the House of Representatives was a bill that specifically would prohibit the US government from developing a central bank digital currency. The Republicans voted for the bill, and the Democrats, by and large, again, it's not monolithic, it's not black and white. There are Democrats that are pro Bitcoin, voted against the central bank digital currency bill. So, you know, and then there's videos of Elizabeth Warren coming out on record basically saying, no, you don't need Bitcoin and crypto. CBDCs could do all of this stuff, right? So, you know, I'm glad that, you know, this era of hostility towards the industry is coming to an end. And I hope what happens from, you know, the results of of last night's election is that the Democrats like reinvent themselves. They really look at the industry and they say, you know what, this isn't going away. Bitcoin should not be considered a partisan issue. It is a bipartisan issue. Bitcoin is for everyone. And they really, you know, take a different look and stance on the entire industry. And I want to say, like, there are Democrats that are pro Bitcoin, but I hope that there's more of them. I hope they come to terms with the fact that, hey, this thing is not going away. Unfortunately, Elizabeth Warren did win her re-election yesterday, even though the opposing candidate did come close. But we are making progress. And I think, this is the last thing I'll say, I think it's going to be politically unviable by 2028 to have an anti-Bitcoin and anti-crypto stance. Full stop. I don't think it's going to be possible. I think that if you do that, this whole pro-Bitcoin army thing that she ran on, like whatever, I don't think that's going to be popular as more and more of the American population starts to adopt non-sovereign alternatives like Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's a big win. I can't emphasize that enough. But I got to say this, just because we're celebrating and we're happy and, you know, Operation Choke Point 2.0 is supposedly over, the work has just begun, right? Ross still needs to be freed. Trump needs to keep his promise. Operation Choke Point 2.0 needs to end. Like, we need to see action, right? I suspect there's going to be, because like I said, Bitcoiners are now a part of the Republican donor base. But you know, it's talk is cheap, actions are expensive. So we shall see.
100%, Nico. Love to see it. I think, just to echo, like, the work has just started, especially as a Bitcoiner. Obviously, like Nick, you know, we got to build the products, make sure people are adopting Bitcoin, but this isn't just like, oh, we win, we get to go home. Nico and I will be here every single day of the week, you know, putting their feet to the fire and making sure that things are going, at least according to what we think should be happening. So we'll be here covering all this stuff for you guys. But before we go on to the show, guys, there is over 1,800 of you guys watching the show live right now. Smash the like button, subscribe, comment, tell us your thoughts on this. We are the #1 daily live Bitcoin show. Make sure you spread the Bitcoin signal. Make sure more people know what's going on. And on that note, guys, we're only halfway through the show. We still got a jam-packed show for you guys. Let's get into it.
Very special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin.
All right, everyone. Before we jump into the news, Opti's going to model it for you guys. Guys, get yourself a Passport by Foundation devices. It's incredibly easy to use, guys. This doesn't sacrifice security. It also gives you convenience. You could pair it up with the Envoy app. It makes spending cold storage Bitcoin incredibly easy. This is the perfect gift to give to someone that perhaps is a little bit intimidated by self-custody. The Passport by Foundation devices is the perfect Bitcoin hardware wallet gift. Scan the QR code or check the link in the video description and use promo code SIMPLY to get a small deal. All right, Opti, what are we talking about today?
All right, guys, again, another running theme. We've been talking about the show. I'm going to just start it with some of Nico's original thought, and then maybe I'll just pass it over to Nico, get him riled up. But Nico, last night, you know, Hold
on, Opti. Guys, we're about to break 2,000 live viewers. If you guys are in the chat, make sure to smash that like button. We're going to break 200 likes on YouTube within the first 40 minutes of the show. So smash the like button if you guys are enjoying the content so far. All right, Opti,
Let's go. All right, guys. So if you're a regular at Simply Bitcoin, you know we constantly are talking about the fact that no one, or rather most of the younger generations, do not trust corporate press or, you know, what we call legacy media. And Nico's been on the beat for a while, basically saying, you know, what we've been thinking here for a long time, that ever since Elon got Twitter, he freed the bird. And last night, Nico was feeling it, and he tweeted, "Thank you, Elon Musk." And we aren't the only ones who've been covering this. Stefan Livera saying something very similar to what we're saying. Retire the term mainstream media. They are now legacy media. It's becoming very obvious, and I think last night was one of those moments, watershed moments for a lot of people out there, realizing that the corporate press, the legacy media, is a propaganda machine, and they are completely detached from reality. And we've been covering this on the show for like every single day, that independent content creators are the new voices out there. And the majority of people, if you are, under 40, I think the statistics are, if you are 65 and plus, you're the only ones watching the television. Everyone else is getting their news from social media apps, like Twitter, like TikTok, Instagram, etc. Hardly anyone is going to legacy media to get their news. And I think yesterday,
hold on. Let me be fair a little bit. Okay. So in regards to, because you said something, you said legacy media is a propaganda machine. Hold on. Okay. So, look, we have given, these are journalists. They go to school for this. They're professionals. We rely on them for information. At least that was the theory. That was their job. What has happened over the last 4 years or so, really since 2016, since Trump went down the escalator, is that the legacy media started to become a little bit more like activists. And it's unfortunate because that's not their job. Their job is to report the news. And this is why you've seen the rise of independent media taking its place, because people know that if they tune into Joe Rogan, they're more than likely going to get just a regular conversation with no type of, political end goals in that in that conversation, than some, not all, but some of the interviews that have been happening in legacy media. That as time progresses, you see these like kind of gotcha interviews. Like the reporters in there, and you know they have these like questions that are loaded, and it's like almost like gotcha, you know, and then they take what the person said out of context, and that's why you're seeing the rise of independent media. You're not seeing the rise of independent media just because, you're seeing the rise of independent media because legacy media failed to do what their job is, which is to be a neutral news source. And because they failed to do that, you're seeing independent media take its place. You're seeing the likes of Joe Rogan, you're seeing the likes of Russell Brand, you're seeing the likes of, you know, it's not a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen, that X is the most popular news platform on the face of the planet. I think people are sick and tired of being fed a certain narrative and then also being asked to not believe their eyes, which is, it's insanity, right? And you know, we are a Bitcoin channel, so I'm not going to focus on all the other kind of political topic, the hot button issues. I don't want to touch them, but I will bring up the example of inflation. So when, you know, there was a record amount of money printing, and I remember Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell, they went on TV, they went on legacy media, and they said, there's going to be no inflation. And then, you know, 6 months later, inflation started happening. And then they said, you know, it's the supply chains, it's the war in Ukraine. It's, you know, it's everything and anything but the fact that the US government printed a record amount of money. And anybody that said otherwise, that confronted them on this, they would say, oh no, that's misinformation. No. It doesn't work like that. It does not work like that, you know? And I'm going to connect this with the Wall Street Journal article that came out that claimed that Bitcoin was being used to launder money to fund a war in the Middle East. That turned out to be bogus. Did the Wall Street Journal retract that article? No, it stayed. Right. So this is why you're seeing the rise of independent media. You're seeing the rise of independent media become popular because it's filling a void, because people they want to seek truth. That's what it fundamentally comes down to. And independent media and legacy media has completely failed with that really big responsibility we gave to them. And you could actually make the same argument that governments have failed with the same responsibility that their citizens gave them with entrusting them with the money. Citizens entrusted their governments with money, and governments abused that trust to debase the currency to pay for things that you can make a very strong argument are completely unnecessary. And we all know that when a government debases the currency, it disproportionately affects the lower middle classes, which are the people who save in fiat. So, you know, this time in human history, we've been talking about it for the last 6 months or so. I call it the Great Disintermediation, which was enabled by the internet. The internet started this. Why? Because it allowed mass scale peer-to-peer communication and mass scale peer-to-peer money, which is Bitcoin. And of course, you know, the legacy players, the legacy gatekeepers, the gatekeepers of information, the gatekeepers of money, of course, they're not going to be happy with this. But, you know, just like Biden created a situation where it forced Bitcoiners to become political because we were persecuted, it's the same situation. Like, we didn't ask for alternative media sources. We were forced to find alternative media sources because we were tired of the BS. We were forced to find alternative money because we were tired of basically being stolen from via currency debasement, right? It's not our fault. They created that situation in the first place. And I remember there's this tweet posted by one of the guys that is associated with Coin Center, and he has it pinned to the top of his profile. And he says, "I'm sorry that your warrantless surveillance regime was built on the assumption that people would always need intermediaries to transact." And you could apply that to information. You can apply that to communication as well. So anyways, that's my bit on that. I know I've been rambling a little bit. Nick, how do you feel about this? I mean,
Yeah.
you've been watching on the sidelines. Do you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I've got maybe a different angle take on some of the mainstream media stuff that you were just talking about, because, and actually some of this comes from some other people that I was listening to on another podcast last week, but they made a really interesting point, which was that, okay, historically, you go back decades ago when all of the main kind of 3 or 4 news outlets were created, and they were these sharers of truth, the neutral news, as you were talking about. Well, over time with the internet, that actually that just information, the basic facts, became available in way more places, right? It wasn't just the newspapers or the media stations on TV or the radio. You can find the facts yourself through Google, through tons and tons of different people and publications. So suddenly facts and neutral news become commoditized, and it actually is no longer that useful for people to be tuning in to some of these mainstream media outlets to get that news, because they can get it elsewhere. So what do the mainstream media outlets have to do in order to protect their business? They have to go more and more into the opinions, more and more into some of this kind of outrage and really triggering people's emotions in order to get the views, in order to get the clicks. And so they become this very mass distributed form of kind of emotional triggering and outrage, right? And so then what happens is people recognize that, and some people buy right into it, and then other people shift and say, no, I want to find a source that I trust more. And so then you get into the internet and kind of the decentralized nature of people being able to communicate with each other. And you have this huge fragmentation of people who speak to basically a niche, like a very specific niche of people. And they have their audience that they're able to find and make a reasonable sized audience due to their reach over the internet. And they can give the news, give their opinion, be a real person to this niche audience that follows them and is really bought into them as their source of truth. And so Rogan's like a great example of this, but he's way on the big end of things. It goes all the way down the spectrum to even really small niches. And so I think that fragmentation is something that will continue to be here to stay. And then some of the platforms like X, YouTube, Nostr, et cetera, are the enabling rails on which all of those smaller kind of sources of truth and sources of opinion actually distribute their content. And so I think that change is almost a structural one, driven by the internet, that like even if CNN, Fox, MSNBC, et cetera, wanted to stay neutral, because of the structural commoditization of facts, they've almost been forced into this realm of opinion. And unless they completely changed how their business worked and really probably shrunk what their business focused on, they were kind of doomed to go into this loop that probably ends up with them significantly less powerful in 50 to 100 years than they were 50 to 100 years ago. So I think that's a very interesting take on this, that it's a lot of it's structural and likely unavoidable unless huge changes were made to their business.
It's interesting. And then that kind of explains why a very interesting perspective, Nick, that kind of explains why a lot of these, so-called journalistic institutions are so pro censorship, because they essentially want to get rid of the competition. They want to go back to the good old days. Right. So it makes sense. No, it's fascinating. And
I think we have to be careful too. Like, I think Elon buying X definitely gave more of a voice to people who were previously being censored on X or elsewhere, right? On YouTube or whatever it is. And I think that's been very helpful. But I don't know about you guys, but I noticed that over the last couple of weeks, my X feed was just getting hammered by seeing basically Elon and Trump, pro-Trump messaging, right? And so it kind of swung the other way for me. And maybe I was doing something wrong by engaging, watching the video and engaged with it. And then the algorithm was like, he wants more of this. but I think it could easily swing either way. And so this is where it's like, okay, ideally the right way to do this is to lean into fragmentation and lean into like what kind of echo chamber do you want to be in, I guess. And then if you need the neutral news, you have to figure out how to kind of see across that spectrum. And maybe tools like Nostr are useful for this, where you can choose kind of the algorithm that you want to run on. But I was definitely feeling a little bit worried about the fact that I was really getting a lot of pro Elon, pro Trump stuff in my feed. And sure, before I might not have seen that at all, but now I'm only seeing that. How do I get? And so I'm asking that question of myself of like, how do I get to see both sides so I can make an informed decision for myself? And
100%.
Some of that is still pretty difficult. You have to really put a lot of attention into how you curate your feed and curate your algorithm in order to do that well. And I sometimes worry that not everybody puts in that time.
No, of course, because it takes a level of technical know-how. And I love, and Nick, you mentioned something earlier, you kind of buried the lead there. And I think it's very, very important not to just rely on one platform. And what I love about Nostr and the protocol is that there is no algo. So it's just like you scroll on Twitter and you get angry. You scroll on Nostr and you're like, this is nice. You know, people are posting about their family and having a good time and all that stuff. So yeah, but very, very interesting perspective, Nick, in terms of how these legacy media outlets didn't do this because they wanted to, but they did this because they were forced to, because of just how the internet completely changed things by and whole. So it's a very, very unique perspective. Anyways, Opti.
I just want to say one last thing, because I think it makes Nick's point very clear. We did see, what was it, like a week or two ago, Jeff Bezos did that opinion piece with the Washington Post, essentially saying like, Americans don't trust media. We have to reevaluate our, newspaper operandi, and they basically blame like podcasters and independent media as like why they're losing. And it just goes to show that yes, peer-to-peer communication as well as peer-to-peer transactions are going to fundamentally change the course of humanity, and we're seeing it play out in real time. And we are the frontline soldiers, just coming out here every single day. You guys ingesting the information, ingesting the content. Like, we are on the front lines, every single one of us, as Bitcoiners, as people that want to know the truth. And just again, like doubling down on what Nick said, you're seeing that the legacy media, the corporate press, they are having to take a notice to this. They are bending the knee to this, and they have to adjust stuff. So as much as there will be some bad, there'll be some good.
It's not only that, Opti, is that like Rogan, and I tweeted this out yesterday too. Yesterday was the first election that I didn't watch on legacy media. I had the Crowder stream pulled up. I had the Bitcoin Magazine stream pulled up. I had just my favorite streamers that were covering the election and getting the results. That's what I was watching. I wasn't watching CNN or Fox News. That's the first time that ever happened. And to kind of add to Nick's point, like, how do you compete with, a full production staff, cameraman, writers, a giant studio with just people that just buy a microphone, get a camera, build up an audience by themselves? Like, who's going to win that game in the long run? It's incredibly obvious. Anyways, the internet is a beautiful thing, but it's also a very disruptive thing. But at the end of the day, I have Bitcoin in self-custody, so I think I'll be all right. Anyways, guys, let's get to the culture. We have lots to talk about. Let's check it out. Here we go. We're going to talk about Casa. And of course, we have the CEO, Nick Neuman. Let's check it out. Here we go. All right, everybody, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, the Orange Collapse. Stack friends who stack sats. Join the 12,233 Bitcoiners that are currently on the app. To get started, scan the QR code or check the link in the video/podcast description. The Orange Collapse is the #1 Bitcoin social layer. So what does that mean? When you're traveling, you're going to a new city, perhaps you're going to Bitcoin conferences. There's so many these days, and you don't know any Bitcoiners around you. The Orange Pull app is for you. You pull it up, has a really clever geographical feature, and it will show you the Bitcoiners that are near you, and it will give you the ability to send them a message so that you can connect with them directly. It's a great networking app. It's probably a pretty good idea to build up that Bitcoiner network that you know, and create those beautiful, beautiful circular economies. It's also one of the best ways to reach me and Opti. You want to send me a question? Don't really answer Twitter DMs these days, but you could send me a message on the Orange Pill app, and I'll make sure to get back to each and every single one of you guys. So anyways, let's open up this conversation. Let's talk about Casa. Casa, guys, for anyone, and they're not a paid sponsor, and anyone is a paid sponsorship or anything, but it is it's a company that I've personally recommended to family members, so that they can have the benefit of multi-sig Bitcoin. So essentially, when you go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and I know Nick, I know you know what I'm going to be talking about. When you go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, first thing you do probably is you buy yourself a ledger. Then, the value of that Bitcoin on that ledger starts to go up, and you're like, wait a second, can I really trust this thing? And then you end up on the 25th word. And then you're like, wait a second, ledger's closed source. Can I really trust this? And then you eventually come around to multi-sig. So the way that multi-sig works is essentially, think about it kind of like a safety deposit box. In order for you to spend your Bitcoin, instead of signing with just one key, you need multiple keys from different signatures in order to send that Bitcoin. So the most popular ones are the 2 of 3 and the 3 of 5. And it really, really kind of depends on your personal setup. So you can do this on your own. You could set up a multi-sig setup on your own. The thing is, with my family members, I don't do that. Why? Because it could potentially end up in a disastrous situation. So this is why companies like Casa are incredible to help you benefit from the benefits of multi-sig Bitcoin, and they also make it incredibly convenient with their app. So if you're not exactly tech savvy, and you haven't paid your dues and spent hours and hours on Electrum and Sparrow and making every mistake known to man, the Casa app makes using multi-sig Bitcoin incredibly easy, convenient, and it also is made in a way so that it's very difficult to make a catastrophic mistake. So anyways, I'm going to pull up the website. Opti has it right here. So Nick, I gave a little bit of my interpretation of what Casa is, just how I've recommended it to people, how I've seen it. What is Casa? What is Casa? Who would you recommend it for?
So Casa, we built Casa to make self-custody easier for people. And the focus is, how do we look at every single problem that you could have self-custodying your Bitcoin and get rid of that for you? Because we ultimately, the more people that are able to self-custody their Bitcoin, the better for Bitcoin and the better for people, because you actually get to control your money. You don't have to worry about whether the bank is doing the right thing with your money, right? So this is it's in the first line of the white paper, right? It's about people being able to transact without going through an intermediary. And so making it easier for people to self-custody is what Casa is all about. And as we were building the company from the very start back in 2018, we said, well, what's the best way to make self-custody safer against risk of loss, safer against risk of theft? Just make it so that people can be a human. They're able to make a mistake with their keys and not have one mistake ruin everything. And the best way to do that is through multi-sig. And a lot of people, when they hear about multi-sig, they're kind of like, that sounds complicated. That sounds like too much for me, the average person, to do. And maybe it is if you're not using the right tool. But with Casa, we've really worked hard on making it as simple as possible for people to use multisig. And honestly, if you're depending on what your setup is in Casa, it can be easier than using a ledger to use Casa. So basically, the gist of how it works is you've got, at our basic kind of level, you've got a key on your phone, a key on a hardware wallet, and a key that's held by Casa. And then you need any two of those three keys to actually move Bitcoin. So that means if you lose your hardware wallet, you can still use the key that's on your phone and the key that's held by Casa to move your Bitcoin. And then you can bring in a new hardware wallet, use the other two keys in order to recover the funds, and you're back to full health. So this lets you make a mistake, lets you be a human without losing all of your money, which is critical, especially as the value of your Bitcoin is going up like it is right now. So that's the core problem that we've solved. But then we've realized that there's other things we can solve problems for in self-custody, like inheritance. This is the thing that we repeatedly heard over and over again from our customers. What happens if I die? Like, I feel good about my self-custody, but if I die, my family doesn't know what to do with these private keys. And so we actually just used multisig to solve the inheritance problem, because you can set it up in such a way that your family has access to not enough keys to be a risk to your Bitcoin before you pass away, but enough keys after you pass away in order to move the Bitcoin and still access it. And so it's a really elegant solution for a really big problem for people that are self-custodying. And what we're seeing lately is people are coming to Casa, pretty technically savvy. Maybe they're doing a multi-sig already with Sparrow, or they've got a 25th word on their ledger or whatever it is. And they're coming to Casa relatively technically savvy, but they're coming for inheritance because they know, I want to make sure that just in case something happens to me, my family has what they need. They're going to get Casa's help. They're going to have Casa's software there to help them access this, because they're not going to be able to do it with Sparrow or Electrum or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is exactly why I recommend I recommend Casa to my family members, just because it is so this is what tends to happen, ladies and gentlemen. And look. So you are the Uncle Jim of your family. So you recommend your Bitcoin to your family members and blah, blah, blah. My mom's been a hardcore Bitcoiner since I got in 2016. And she's like, and the Fed and all that stuff, 21 million, number go up forever. But I'm like, Mom, could you send me a Bitcoin transaction? She'll be like, I don't know. Right. So I set her up on, a 2 of 3 or 3 of 5. I'm not going to be specific on which one. And, there's been multiple times where my mom has lost a key and the Casa app makes it incredibly easy for you to replace that key. So like no damage is done. Like you lose one of those, 3 of 5 keys, or you lose one of those, one of the because there's multiple options, right, Nick? You can have
2 of 3 or 3 of 5.
Yeah, but the 2 of 3, like you can have a key on your phone, but you could also choose to use 2 hardware wallets instead as well, right?
Yeah.
So
and that's for the people who are like, oh, I don't really want to trust having a key on my phone with Casa, right? You can always, at the 2 of 3 level, you can swap that out for a second hardware wallet.
Yeah. So again, it's all based on, what people choose. And one of the things that happens is, okay, she loses a key, and you go through the Casa app, it says I lost a key, and you plug in the new hardware wallet, and bada bing, bada boom, your wallet's fine again, right? And it gives you a nice little haptic feedback as well when you do it, so it makes you feel good.
You get the confetti.
Yeah, you get the confetti and the haptic feedback. And then I know that every 6 months or so, you guys ask for key checks, right? Yeah. Which I think are very important, right? Because with self-custody comes great responsibility, ladies and gentlemen. And you think your seeds are fine, and you're sending all that Bitcoin to that cold storage, and then 6 months later you're like, wait a second, actually I don't have those keys, right? So you guys remind people about, like, I don't know what it is, like every couple of months to kind of like double check, find out what's going on, and follow up. So you guys just also announced the enterprise solution, So this is for says specific here. It says maximum security for your Bitcoin treasury. So I'm assuming this is for Bitcoin companies or any company in general that wants to benefit from multisig.
Yeah. So we've noticed, I mean, you look at MicroStrategy, right? They've been very successful with the Bitcoin treasury strategy. And we've just noticed that other companies, Casa included, have started that are much smaller than MicroStrategy, have started doing the Bitcoin treasury strategy for themselves and putting some portion of their treasury into Bitcoin, particularly Bitcoin companies, right? That are like, they've maybe gone and raised a little bit of money from VCs, and they take some of that investment and they put it into Bitcoin. And that Bitcoin as an appreciating asset on their balance sheet becomes a huge advantage for them as a startup. And so the problem was they didn't really have a purpose-built solution for securing that Bitcoin. And so people are either were kind of hacking together their own kind of multi-sig setup, or they were keeping it on an exchange or with a custodian, but didn't feel great about that, but felt like, well, this isn't my own personal holdings. Maybe I need to do something that fits within kind of my fiduciary duty as an executive of a business. I can't just have this on a single key, that if I lose it, I lose all of my business's money. So what we built is a really easy way for people to use Casa as a business. You can set teammates up who are going to hold keys on your team. You can add people to view your account like your accountants. Like one of the things that we've realized over time, just holding our own Bitcoin treasury with our own product, is like it was kind of a pain to give the information about how much Bitcoin we had to our accountants. So we made really easy ways for you to do that, like boring stuff, right? That you have to do as a business, which is make sure your accountants can see how much Bitcoin you have. Make sure your accountants can run the compliance checks to know you actually do have the keys. All of these things that I think weren't really packaged together well. And so what we did was take these initial set of problems that we knew we were running into ourselves and that we knew a couple of our Bitcoin company clients were running into, and build a solution specifically for that. And so we just launched it last week. We're really excited about this because especially going into next year where the Bitcoin price is going to be going up a lot, all of these companies that have invested, maybe a relatively small part of their treasury, 5 to 10% into Bitcoin, suddenly that 5 to 10% is going to grow to be 20%, 30%, 50% of their treasury. And they're going to need way better security. And so we're here for them to have a solution that fits for what they need as a business.
No, and I think we're gonna and it's a problem, man. It's a problem because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where I don't want to name any specific companies, but a lot of these large companies are outsourcing their custody to third parties, specifically Coinbase. Coinbase has a lot of.
I think MicroStrategy's got a bunch of Bitcoin on Coinbase. They probably got some with Fidelity. I've been trying to get Saylor to take a little bit of that and put it into self-custody just to protect against some of that systemic risk.
Exactly. So, ideally you want these companies, you want individuals, because fundamentally, guys, like that's what's going to change things. What's going to change things is individuals holding their own wealth. And what's beautiful about this product as well too is specifically with the 2 of 3 or the 3 of 5 is it gives you the ability to make a mistake and not lose access to your Bitcoin, but you guys also hold a key in case of an emergency. So let's say you do a 2 of 3 and you lose one of your keys. It's okay because Casa could sign that transaction for you after a certain set of things have been met. It's either like a 7-day waiting period, or you have to confirm your face, something like that. Put like passwords or something. But after you meet that certain criteria, Casa will sign on your behalf. So it kind of like functions as a fail safe, but at the same time, Casa can't spend that Bitcoin on your behalf because they only have one of the two of three or one of the three of five, and you need at least two of the three keys to spend, or you need at least three of the five keys to spend. Right.
Yep.
So that's really cool as well. And one of the things that you guys announced at Bitcoin 2024, which I thought was really, really interesting, is you guys added the YubiKey because, you know, for a lot of people, and I've just been used to dealing, again, I'm the Uncle Jim, right? I've just been used to dealing with older individuals and older, you know, people that perhaps they've, you know, they're used to banking and they're used to this. And then I'm like, yeah, here's a ledger. And, you know, you press these two buttons on the top and you plug it into your computer and they're like, what the fuck is this shit? So you guys announced the YubiKey at Bitcoin 2024. And I'm assuming you guys announced that to make it easier for individuals to spend their Bitcoin.
Yes, and I'm trying to find one right now so that I can just show everybody what they look like, because it is like really simple, which is great because, yeah, here's one. All right, sorry about that. So like you said, what we found was, okay, even though we've made the Casa software very easy to use and we've made it so messing up with a hardware wallet is less of a big deal, people still feel very worried and they just don't like using a hardware wallet. There's something about this new form factor, this tiny screen, you're clicking the buttons like you were saying, just doesn't feel great for people who are new to holding their own keys. And so YubiKeys are these little devices that look like this. This has a private key and the ability and a chip that can do secure computation on it. And these have been around for, I don't know, 10 years or something like that. And historically, they've been used just in non-Bitcoin related security applications. So you can use one of these for 2FA on your critical accounts like your Apple ID or your Google account. Highly recommend doing that. We made it so that you can use this to store Bitcoin key. And so all it takes is literally plugging this in and tapping it, and you've signed a Bitcoin transaction. Plug it in, tap it, enter your PIN, and then you've signed a Bitcoin transaction. So that PIN is great because it helps protect against somebody stealing the YubiKey itself. So we think this is a game changer because it really makes it simple for people to have a separate cold device that stores their private key and then use that as part of a multi-sig in order to make multi-sig more approachable, make self-custody more approachable. So that's the big kind of unlock that we announced at Bitcoin Nashville. And this is something people have been loving it. It's already the third most popular hardware device since we launched it. Of all the people who have signed up for Casa since then, the YubiKey is the third most popular hardware device after Trezor and Ledger. So it's been a really big win for us, and we're really excited about how much everybody loves it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it just makes the whole process, easier. And again, if you're transitioning from, and like, let's be real, guys, the vast majority of people that hold the wealth are the older generations, right? And you're going up to them, you're like, yo, I got you a cold card or a passport, and they're going to look at you like, what the fuck are you, excuse me, what the F are you talking about? Yeah. So the easier you make it for them, the less I want to pull my eyes out as Uncle Jim because I'm the one getting all the phone calls. So, yeah.
And then they graduate to cold card eventually, right? Like a cold card is going to be more secure than a YubiKey.
Of course.
You have a screen to verify your transactions, all that kind of thing. But as part of a multi-sig, the YubiKey is still incredibly secure. So, but eventually somebody they get further down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Maybe they want to swap that YubiKey out for a cold card, and that's great. You can use a cold card with Casa. You can use a Foundation passport, cold card, Ledger, Trezor, YubiKey. So we support all of these different hardware wallets, and we see that people use all of them. There was a good question in the chat here. Somebody asked if the YubiKey supports a seed phrase, and what do you do if you lose it? So yeah, it has a seed phrase on it because we're actually generating the private key and encrypting it on and storing it on the YubiKey, and that has a seed phrase, and you can export that at any time to be able to transfer to a different key or to use in sovereign recovery if Casa goes out of business. So all of these things are, it's the same kind of functionality that you have with a normal hardware wallet. And if you lose it, it's part of your multi-sig. So you lose it, you can either recover it if you have the seed phrase, or you swap in another key and use your other keys to recover your funds. So it's it works very similarly to how you would use a hardware wallet.
Beautiful. And I know that you guys recently announced that you guys did add Passport 2 support as well.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah, we did. And we have a couple people on our team that love the Passport batch 2, say it's really awesome. And so we're excited to be supporting that now. And I especially like the fact that with the Passport, you don't have to plug it into your computer. So you're using the Casa mobile app. You just scan the Passport QR code. It does everything and just straight on your phone. And the Passport, you don't have to go through plugging a Trezor into a computer, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, Nick, it was an honor to have you on the show today. Guys, if you want to go check out Casa, www.casa.io to get started. Again, makes taking self-custody easy. This is the perfect recommendation that I would give to family members, older family members. And perhaps if you're thinking about inheritance as well, it's a great product to recommend because they made it human friendly and also, I don't want to say idiot proof, but it's difficult. It's
pretty close to idiot proof.
It's difficult to make mistakes.
Yeah,
it's difficult to lose access to your Bitcoin if you're using Casa for self custody.
Yes, it is. You have to really try to do things, and honestly, as long as you just follow what the Casa app tells you to do, you're going to be good.
Absolutely, and you guys have a great support system as well.
Yep. Yeah, we do. This isn't Coinbase. You're not going to email us and not hear back for days, right? You're going to hear back within 24 hours.
Perfect. I love that. Anyways, guys, this was Simply Bitcoin live for November 6, 2024. I'm your co-host today. Opti's the host today. And our special guest is Nick Neuman, CEO of Casa. Head over to casa.io to get started. All right. Love you all. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
Was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.